All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving deep into some seriously fascinating stuff. We're talking prophecy, spirituality, and how the world might just be about to go through some major shifts. Our guide for this wild ride, a YouTube interview with Shinichi Nakaya, an expert on the Hitsuki Shinji. Ever heard of it?
I bet some of our listeners have. It's a Japanese prophetic text, and let me tell you, it's a real head-scratcher. Decoding its cryptic language is no walk in the park. Nakaya's work has been crucial in cracking making the Hitsuki Shinji make sense, especially with his book back in '91 became a bestseller.
Right, his book kind of put the Hitsuki Shinji on the map, didn't it? What I find fascinating is that he was digging into all this back in the late 80s. Japan's economy was booming, everyone was caught up in the material world, but Nakaya was searching for something deeper, something more. So what was it about the Hitsuki Shinji that drew him in?
Well, he was on a quest for, I guess you could say, ultimate truths about the world, about life, the big questions. And that search led him to the Hitsuki Shinji. It's believed to have been written through automatic writing by a guy named Okamoto Tenmei.
Automatic writing, huh?
Yeah, picture this. Someone writing without even thinking about it. The words just flowing from, well, who knows where.
Almost like channeling, right? It makes you wonder about the real source of the information.
Yeah.
So let's get to the good stuff. What kind of prophecies are we talking about here? What does the Hitsuki Shinji actually say?
Oh, there are some startling predictions in there. Get this. It reportedly predicted Japan's defeat in World War II, its economic miracle after, and even the burst of that economic bubble.
Wow, those are some major turning points in Japan's history. If the Hitsuki Shinji really saw those coming, that's pretty incredible. But predicting the past is one thing. What about the future? What else is in store for us, according to this text?
Well, the Hitsuki Shinji goes even further. It warns about an even bigger event on the horizon, what Nakaya calls a replacement event.
Replacement? That's a pretty loaded word.
It is, isn't it? He believes it'll completely reshape Japan's social systems, and that's just the beginning. He thinks the impact will be felt worldwide.
Makes you think of something being completely overturned, doesn't it? Could this replacement event be tied to all the craziness happening globally right now?
Nakaya definitely thinks so. He sees things like the COVID-19 pandemic and, all the chaos that came with it. He sees those as potential signs, maybe even precursors to this major replacement.
So how does this all tie into the Hitsuki Shinji?
Well, the Hitsuki Shinji talks about something called a world remodeling plan.
World remodeling plan. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's basically a process where destruction and creation happen at the same time.
Whoa, hold on. Destruction and creation simultaneously. That sounds pretty intense. What kind of destruction are we talking about here?
The Hitsuki Shinji mentions something called Asia system that's kind of pushing the world towards a standstill.
AC system, huh? What's that all about?
It's a little vague, to be honest. Some interpret it as those negative forces, the things that lead to chaos and dysfunction in the world.
So it's like the world needs to hit rock bottom before things can get better.
Well, according to the Hitsuki Shinji, after Asia system does its thing, something amazing happens. There's supposed to be some kind of divine intervention, and that's when the real transformation begins.
A divine intervention leading to a complete world transformation. That's a pretty big claim. What role does Japan play in all of this?
Here's the interesting part. The Hitsuki Shinji says that Japan has a crucial role to play, almost as if it's a spiritual center for the changes to come.
Japan at the center of a global spiritual shift. Now, that's something I'd like to see. Does the Hitsuki Shinji give any specifics about how this will all go down?
It mentions something called the Gaia Law, which ties into this idea of cyclical civilization.
Cyclical civilizations?
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
Think of it like seasons, but on a massive scale. Civilizations rise and fall in predictable patterns, just like the seasons change. And according to this concept, we're currently witnessing one civilization fading away and another one getting ready to take its place.
Okay, so we've got these cyclical civilizations. Which civilization is on the decline and which one is about to rise up?
Based on Nakaya's interpretation of the Hitsuki Shinji, it seems Anglo-Saxon civilization, which has been dominant for a long time, is on its way out.
And the one that's poised to take over.
Eastern civilization, with Japan potentially leading the charge.
Wow, that would be a massive shift in the global balance of power. But what about America? It's still a major force in the world. How does America fit into all of this?
Nakaya sees what's been happening in America lately, from the Trump years to the pandemic to the Biden administration, as signs of decline. He points to a warning in the Hitsuki Shinji about evil freedom and evil equality as a possible explanation for what's going on.
Evil freedom and evil equality. Could you unpack that a bit? I'm not quite sure what that means.
It's a bit vague, yeah. But some folks interpret it as a warning against, like, extremes. Extremes of individualism and a kind of distorted idea of equality.
Interesting. There's certainly a lot of division and polarization in America these days. You could even say it's happening globally. So the Hitsuki Shinji seems to suggest that America's decline will have ripple effects, especially on Japan.
Yeah, definitely. Especially given how closely connected Japan and America are, economically, politically, you name it. Any major shakeup in America would undoubtedly affect Japan as well. And this next part might be a little unsettling for some folks. The Hitsuki Shinji also talks about population control as a potential way to deal with the strain on Earth's resources.
Population control. Yeah, that's definitely a sensitive topic. What's the Hitsuki Shinji's take on it?
Well, it suggests there might be an elite group, they're sometimes called Ishiya people, who are basically orchestrating a population control agenda. Now remember, we're just exploring what the text says, not necessarily saying we agree with it.
Right, of course. It's important to look at this from a neutral perspective. So, who are these Ishiya people and how are they supposedly controlling the population?
It's not totally clear who they are, but some think of them as this powerful group operating behind the scenes, influencing global events. And here's where it gets a little, well, conspiracy-ish. The Hitsuki Shinji even hints that manufactured pandemics, things like AIDS, SARS, and COVID-19, might be part of their plan.
Hold on, are we venturing into conspiracy theory territory here?
Well, prophecy and spirituality often intersect with conspiracy theories, don't they? The Hitsuki Shinji doesn't explicitly say it believes these ideas, but it does present them as possibilities.
Okay, so it's more like food for thought, not necessarily a statement of fact. So what else does the Hitsuki Shinji say about this population control thing?
It mentions a 1/3 reduction, which some people interpret as a major decrease in the human population.
A 1/3 reduction. Wow, it's a pretty bold statement. How's that supposed to happen?
The details are vague, but the text hints at a selection process that's already underway. Some folks believe this refers to the growing polarization we're seeing in society, people being divided into us and them.
Like a separation of those who are aligned with the changes and those who aren't. Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. So where does China fit into all this?
Nostradamus focuses a lot on China's growing surveillance system, especially its Beidou satellite network. He suggests it could play a major role in the changes to come.
China's definitely been expanding its technological capabilities, and it's no secret that their economic growth has been remarkable, though some experts have been warning about a potential economic bubble in China. If that bubble bursts, the consequences could be felt worldwide. Does the Hitsuki Shinji say anything else about China's involvement in all of this?
There are hints about a shadowy organization controlling the Chinese Communist Party, a secret society known only as XXX.
XXX. Sounds mysterious.
It's unclear who they are or what they're really up to, but Nakaya implies they're a powerful force within China, one that could influence events globally.
A secret society pulling the strings. This is getting more and more intriguing. What else do we know about this XXX group?
Not much, unfortunately. Nakaya also mentions the Zhejiang financial clique, a group of wealthy and influential families in China. He suggests they might have connections to, get this, prominent Jewish families, like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers.
The Rothschilds and Rockefellers. Now, those are names you often hear in conspiracy theories about global financial control. Is Nakaya implying that they're involved in this world remodeling plan?
Well, he seems to be drawing a connection between them and these mysterious funds known as M funds, which are supposedly controlled by the Japanese emperor.
M funds? I never heard of them. What are they all about?
They're described as off-balance sheet funds, meaning they're not officially recorded. Rumors say they're massive and could be used to, well, pretty much anything, influencing political events, bailing out companies, manipulating global markets, you name it.
If they're real, that's an incredible amount of power concentrated in one place. Are M funds even real? Or are we just talking about another conspiracy theory?
It's tough to say for sure. There are stories floating around about them, but concrete evidence is hard to come by. Nakaya even warns against financial scams related to M funds, people exploiting the belief in their existence to make a quick buck. So yeah, take all of this with a grain of salt.
This is getting pretty complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got prophecy, conspiracy theories, potential financial maneuvering. It's a lot to unpack. Let's go back to the Japanese emperor for a minute. What does the Hitsuki Shinji have to say about the future of the emperor system?
It's interesting because the word emperor doesn't actually show up that often in the text. It only appears twice, and both times it's specifically referring to Emperor Jinmu.
Emperor Jinmu. Remind me who that is again?
He's considered the legendary founder of Japan.
Oh, right. So if they don't use emperor, what do they call him in the Hitsuki Shinji?
They use other titles, like Tenchi-sama, which means heavenly being or angel, and Amatsu Hitsumi Sumaramikoto, a more formal and ancient title.
Those titles definitely have a more spiritual vibe to them. What does the Hitsuki Shinji say about the future of Tenchi-sama?
Well, according to the text, Tenchi-sama is going to become the center of the world, leading humanity into a new era of peace and harmony.
That sounds pretty idyllic.
It does, doesn't it? But there's a bit of ambiguity about whether this refers to the current imperial family or someone else in the future who'll take on that role.
So there's room for interpretation there. Speaking of interpretations, you mentioned a Jewish connection earlier. What does that have to do with the Hitsuki Shinji?
The Hitsuki Shinji hints at a possible connection between Japan and the 10 lost tribes of Israel. It's an idea that's fascinated people for centuries.
Yeah, the 10 lost tribes, those Israelite tribes that vanished from history after being exiled centuries ago. What's the connection to Japan? Seems like a bit of a stretch.
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea. Some believe that those lost tribes migrated east and eventually settled in various parts of the world, including Japan. And the Hitsuki Shinji seems to suggest that these two cultures, despite being so far apart geographically, have a deeper spiritual connection.
Fascinating. So what kind of collaboration does the Hitsuki Shinji envision between Japan and the descendants of these lost tribes?
The specifics are a bit murky, but it suggests that this collaboration will be crucial for bringing about the Age of Miroku.
The Age of Miroku. Can you refresh my memory on what that is?
It's a concept from Buddhist tradition. It's all about Miroku Bosatsu, the future Buddha.
Oh, right.
Think of Miroku Bosatsu like a messianic figure, someone who will appear on Earth to save all beings. The Age of Miroku is a time of peace, prosperity, and spiritual enlightenment, kind of like the Western idea of a golden age or utopia.
So the Hitsuki Shinji is linking this Buddhist concept to its own prediction of a global transformation. It's interesting how it blends these different spiritual traditions. But how do we get from the world as it is now to this utopian Age of Miroku? What needs to happen?
Well, the Hitsuki Shinji doesn't shy away from describing some pretty dramatic events. For example, it mentions the possibility of a pole shift, a catastrophic event that could have devastating consequences for the entire planet.
A pole shift. I remember learning about those in school. Isn't that where the Earth's magnetic poles flip?
Exactly.
What kind of consequences are we talking about here?
Scientists believe a pole shift could trigger massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, you name it. It would disrupt the Earth's magnetic field, leaving us vulnerable to harmful cosmic radiation.
That sounds terrifying. Is there any way to survive something like that? Does the Hitsuki Shinji offer any hope if a pole shift were to occur?
It suggests that the pole shift will coincide with a dimensional shift, a transformation of reality itself. It describes humans transitioning from a carbon body to a silicon body.
A silicon body. That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it? It describes these silicon bodies as half spirit, half matter, with longer lifespans and a heightened spiritual awareness.
So we'd become more like energy beings, less bound by the limitations of our current physical forms. That's a pretty major shift. What about technology? Where does that fit into all of this?
Nakaya talks about AI potentially being the last invention of human society, a turning point that could lead to both incredible progress and unforeseen consequences.
AI. That's a whole other can of worms, isn't it? So we've got a potential pole shift, a dimensional shift, humans becoming more spiritual, and AI potentially changing everything. Is there anything else the Hitsuki Shinji touches on?
One last thing, and this one might surprise you. Nakaya expresses a desire for humanity to join the Space Federation.
Hold on, the Space Federation? Like in Star Trek, is he serious?
He seems to be. He envisions humanity becoming part of a larger galactic community, interacting with other civilizations and expanding our understanding of the universe. He even shares a story about someone he knows who claims to have met a representative from the Space Federation.
Wow, that's taken a turn for the unexpected. What was this person's impression of these extraterrestrial beings? Were they friendly?
Interestingly, the person wasn't that impressed. Described them as overly bureaucratic and obsessed with rules and regulations. It seems even extraterrestrial civilizations have their own issues to deal with.
That's kind of funny. Reminds us that even if we do encounter other intelligent life, they might not be what we expect. This whole deep dive has been one wild ride after another. I don't know about you, but I need a minute to process all of this.
It's definitely a lot to take in. But remember, we're just exploring the ideas presented in the Hitsuki Shinji. We're not necessarily saying we agree with everything it says. The goal is to present the information and let you, the listener, decide what resonates with you.
That's a good point. I think this is a good place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, and it's important to give our listeners time to digest it all.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore the personal and collective implications of these ideas, what they might mean for our lives both now and in the future. Stay tuned.
All right, so we've just uncovered this treasure trove of predictions and possibilities from the Hitsuki Shinji. We've got global power shifts, dimensional transformations, even contact with extraterrestrial beings. It's a lot to wrap our heads around. I'm sure our listeners are buzzing with questions and insights. What stands out to you most from all of this?
You know, what really fascinates me is how much the Hitsuki Shinji emphasizes personal transformation. It sees that as a key to navigating the changes ahead. It's not just about bracing ourselves for external events, but also about our own inner evolution, you know?
That's what I find so compelling about the Hitsuki Shinji. It's not just doom and gloom prophecy. It's about empowerment, about tapping into our potential and becoming more than we are now. It's not just predicting the future, it's about shaping it.
Exactly. It's a call to awaken to our true nature, to recognize that divine spark within each of us. And it suggests that this awakening isn't just an individual pursuit, it's a collective one.
A rising tide of consciousness transforming the world from the inside out. I love that image. But how do we actually apply this to our lives? What can we do to prepare for these potential changes, both internally and externally?
Well, the Hitsuki Shinji really stresses the importance of self-sufficiency. That means developing practical skills and resources, things that will allow us to thrive even when things get rough.
That makes a lot of sense. If we're potentially facing disruptions to the systems we rely on, like food, energy, communication, having some level of independence could be crucial.
Right. But that independence goes beyond just the material stuff. It's also about cultivating inner strength, resilience, a deep connection to our own intuition and guidance.
I remember Nakaya saying something about the Hitsuki Shinji being like a mirror. It's not about blindly following instructions, but using it as a tool for self-reflection, for uncovering our own inner truths.
That's a great point. The prophecies and predictions aren't set in stone. They're not destiny. They're more like invitations to explore our potential and become active participants in shaping our lives. We're not just passengers on this journey, we're co-creators.
So while the Hitsuki Shinji paints this vivid picture of potential future events, it also emphasizes the importance of personal agency. We have a choice. We can either be swept along by the currents of change or consciously create the future we desire.
And that conscious creation starts with awareness, with questioning and exploring, with looking beyond the surface to discover those deeper truths that resonate within us. It's about connecting to that inner compass that guides us toward our highest potential.
That's where the real adventure begins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stepping outside of our comfort zones, expanding our perspectives, and embracing the unknown with a sense of wonder and curiosity.
Absolutely. And who knows what we might find along the way. Perhaps we'll discover that the future isn't something to be feared, but something to be embraced. A realm of infinite possibilities for growth, transformation, and connection.
That's a really inspiring perspective. But I know some listeners might be wondering about the more practical aspects of preparation. If these predictions of global upheaval and potential catastrophes are accurate, how do we practically prepare for them?
The Hitsuki Shinji doesn't give us a specific checklist or anything, but it does emphasize the importance of community. Building resilient networks of support, sharing resources, coming together in times of need.
So it's not just about individual survival, it's about collective resilience, working together to support each other and create a more sustainable and compassionate world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, not just as humans, but as part of this larger web of life that encompasses everything.
That reminds me of Nakaya's talk about the Space Federation, the idea that we're not alone in the universe, that we have the potential to connect with other civilizations. It's a powerful reminder that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
It is. And even if the existence of a literal space federation is up for debate, the underlying message is still profound. We're part of a cosmic story, a universal unfolding that extends far beyond our little planet.
It's both humbling and awe-inspiring, isn't it? It makes our everyday worries seem so small compared to the vastness of the cosmos.
It certainly does. It also invites us to expand our consciousness and embrace a more cosmic view of ourselves and our place in the universe.
So we have this big picture perspective, this sense of cosmic interconnectedness. But what about the practicalities of preparing for these potential future events? What specific steps can we take to feel more grounded and secure?
Well, the Hitsuki Shinji doesn't offer a blueprint for survival, but it does stress the importance of inner strength and spiritual grounding. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, connecting with nature, these can help us cultivate a sense of peace and stability, even when things are chaotic around us.
That makes sense. When the world feels chaotic and unpredictable, having a strong inner foundation can make all the difference.
It's about finding that balance between inner and outer preparation. We can take practical steps to make sure we're physically safe and secure while also nurturing our spiritual and emotional well-being.
It's like building an ark for our souls as well as our bodies.
Exactly. And remembering that true security doesn't come from external circumstances, but from that unshakable connection to our inner wisdom and the divine spark within.
The Hitsuki Shinji seems to be suggesting that navigating these times of change requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to embrace the unknown and trust in the unfolding of a larger plan.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we're not just victims of circumstance, we're active participants in the evolution of consciousness itself. We have the power to choose how we respond to challenges, how we contribute to the collective good, and how we shape the future we want to see.
That's a powerful message of empowerment. It reminds us that we're not just at the mercy of fate, we're co-creators of our destiny.
And it's a co-creation that involves not just our individual actions, but also our collective intentions. What we focus our energy on, what we believe in, what we choose to create together. All of this contributes to the unfolding tapestry of reality.
So it's not about waiting for something to happen to us. It's about actively shaping the world we want to live in.
Exactly. It's about becoming conscious architects of our future, both individually and collectively.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. It takes the Hitsuki Shinji's predictions and turns them into an invitation to step into our power and create a world that reflects our highest aspirations.
The Hitsuki Shinji reminds us that we're not powerless observers, we're active participants in this grand symphony of creation. And we each have a unique melody to contribute.
I love that analogy. Each of us has a part to play in the grand symphony of creation.
And the beauty of it is that no two melodies are the same. Our individual experiences, perspectives, and gifts all contribute to the richness and complexity of the overall composition.
It's a celebration of diversity and the unique contributions that each soul brings to the collective.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that we're all interconnected, even in our differences.
So if each of us has this unique melody to contribute, what would you say is the overall theme of the symphony that the Hitsuki Shinji is inviting us to co-create?
If I had to put it into words, I'd say it's a symphony of awakening, of transformation, and of unity. It's a call to move beyond separation and division and embrace a future where we recognize our interconnectedness and work together to create a world that reflects our highest potential.
A symphony of awakening, transformation, and unity. That's a powerful image. But what does that actually look like in practical terms? How do we move from this vision to concrete action?
It starts with a shift in consciousness, a recognition that we're not separate from one another or from the natural world. We're all part of this one interconnected web of life.
So it's about moving beyond the illusion of separation and embracing a more holistic, interconnected way of being.
Exactly, and that shift in consciousness naturally leads to more compassionate, sustainable, and just ways of living. We start to care for one another and the planet in a deeper way because we understand that we're all in this together.
It's like that saying, we're all just walking each other home.
Yes, exactly. We're all on this journey together, and how we treat each other and the planet ultimately determines where we end up.
So the Hitsuki Shinji, in its own unique way, seems to be calling for a global awakening, a shift in values and priorities that leads to a more harmonious and interconnected world.
It is. And it's not just a passive waiting game, it's an invitation to actively participate in this transformation.
And that participation can take many forms. It could be something as simple as being kinder to our neighbors, or as grand as dedicating our lives to creating social or environmental change.
Exactly. Every act of kindness, every step we take toward a more sustainable way of living, every effort we make to bridge divides and create unity, all of these actions contribute to the symphony of awakening that the Hitsuki Shinji is calling for.
It's a powerful reminder that we each have the power to make a difference, no matter how small our actions may seem.
That's right. And when we come together, when we unite our intentions and efforts, we can create a ripple effect that can transform the world.
So the Hitsuki Shinji isn't just a collection of predictions, it's a call to action. an invitation to step into our power and co-create a brighter future.
It is, and it reminds us that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together, one thought, one action, one choice at a time.
That's a truly inspiring message, and it's one that I think resonates deeply with the human spirit.
I agree, there's something within us that yearns for connection, for meaning, for a world where we can all thrive together.
And the Hitsuki Shinji, in its own mystical way, seems to be pointing us towards that path.
It is. It's offering us a glimpse of a future that is not only possible, but also within our reach if we choose to embrace it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it leads us to the question that we've been building towards throughout this deep dive. What resonates most deeply with you, dear listener?
With all that we've explored, what sparks your curiosity? What calls to your heart? What inspires you to take action?
We've journeyed through prophecy, spirituality, global shifts, personal transformation, even the possibility of extraterrestrial contact.
It's been a whirlwind of ideas, and it's natural to feel a mix of excitement, confusion, and maybe even a little bit of overwhelm.
But amidst all of this, there's a golden thread of hope, of empowerment, of the possibility of creating a world that is more beautiful, more just, and more compassionate than anything we can currently imagine.
So as we move towards the final part of our deep dive, I invite you to take a moment to reflect. Reflect on what has touched you most deeply, what has stirred your soul, and what has ignited a spark of possibility within you.
So here we are, the final stretch of our deep dive into the Hitsuki Shinji. Prophecies, spiritual awakenings, global shakeups, even the possibility of hanging out with extraterrestrials. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It has. A real mind bender.
What are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should be pondering after all of this?
Well, I think the biggest one is that the future isn't fixed. It's not a done deal. The Hitsuki Shinji gives us a glimpse of what might be, sure, but it also stresses that we have the power to choose our path.
It's not a passive prediction. It's an active invitation to shape the future. I really like that. It's easy to feel powerless when you hear about these predictions of global upheaval and all that. But the Hitsuki Shinji seems to be saying, we have more agency than we think.
Exactly. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, they all contribute to the reality we experience. We're not just along for the ride, we're helping to steer the ship.
And speaking of steering the ship together, the Hitsuki Shinji really highlights the importance of community, right? It's not just about each of us surviving on our own, it's about coming together, supporting one another, building a world that can weather the storms.
You got it. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, not just as humans, but as part of this vast web of life that includes everything. We need to move away from this mindset of scarcity and competition and embrace a mindset of abundance and cooperation.
It makes you think about what humanity could achieve if we really got that, if we truly embraced our interconnectedness and worked together towards a common goal.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it? And it aligns perfectly with what the Hitsuki Shinji describes as a transformed world. A world where peace and harmony and spiritual awakening are the norm.
It's definitely a world I'd like to live in. But how do we actually get there from here? The Hitsuki Shinji talks about some pretty intense stuff. Pole shifts, dimensional shifts, the selection process. That sounds a little ominous. It can be a bit overwhelming to think about, to be honest.
I hear ya. The Hitsuki Shinji doesn't shy away from the challenges, that's for sure. But it also offers a guide for how to navigate these changes, both as individuals and as a collective. It stresses the importance of inner transformation, of developing our spiritual awareness, of aligning ourselves with something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not just about battening down the hatches and waiting for the storm to pass. It's about evolving, about preparing ourselves for a new way of being.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that these challenges aren't just random events, they're part of a larger process of evolution, something that's pushing humanity towards a higher level of consciousness.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's almost like these challenges are designed to wake us up, to help us shed old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve us, and to step into our full potential.
I think that's a key takeaway from the Hitsuki Shinji. It's not just predicting doom and gloom, it's a call to action, an invitation to take part in this evolutionary leap and co-create a future that reflects our highest aspirations.
I think that's a powerful message for our listeners to take to heart. It's not about passively waiting for the future to happen. It's about actively shaping it. But there's one piece of the puzzle that I'm still curious about. The Hitsuki Shinji talks about this silicon body, this transformation from our current carbon-based forms to something more, well, ethereal, more energy-based. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's one of the more out there concepts in the Hitsuki Shinji. And there are a lot of different interpretations floating around. Some people think it's a literal physical transformation, while others see it as a metaphor for spiritual awakening.
So it could be about transcending the limitations of our physical bodies
Yeah.
and becoming more multidimensional beings.
Exactly. Expanding our consciousness, tapping into a wider range of perception and experience.
That's a fascinating concept. Definitely gets the imagination going.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a few final thoughts. First, remember that the future isn't set in stone. We have the power to choose our path and create the reality we want to experience. Second, cultivate your inner strength and resilience. The challenges ahead may be tough, but we have the inner resources to face them with grace and courage.
And don't forget the power of community and collaboration. We're all in this together, and by working together, we can create a future that is more beautiful and just than we can even imagine right now.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of the Hitsuki Shinji. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring the mysteries of life. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep that sense of wonder alive.